welcome back to The Fix with me, Karima Brown. To help us unpack the week in headlines, I'm joined in the studio by a contributing editor of Business Times, Hilary Joffe, as well as Sikonati Manchanja from the Daily Maverick. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Sikonati, I don't know what your title is at Daily Maverick. Just give me a sense of what it is that you do there quickly before we get into the headlines.
I just write.
You just write?
I'm the associate editor of Scorpio.
Okay, so you're the associate editor of the Scorpio unit, which is, of course, the investigative unit. We're going to come to that. But let's start with the city press this week. The headline, quite shocking, Hilary, Denel blows 250 million arms deal with Chad. What do you make of this story? This is an organization that couldn't pay salaries a few months ago.
Look, this looks like another one of these legacy of state capture stories that they entered into a contract to supply armaments to Chad. They then seem to have sold the intellectual property rights for these particular products to VR Laser, which was a Gupta company. So as far as I can tell from this rather complicated story, the Denel itself Chad is contesting it because they haven't delivered it and has gone as far as the presidency, and this has been going on for some time. Denel seems to be uncomfortable about the fact that the contract itself was entered into possibly unlawfully or improperly. So this, at a time when Denel is pretty cash-strapped and they're desperate to turn it around and justify its existence for that matter, this whole thing is sort of coming to pieces, partly because of presumably the legacy of the misdemeanors, the malfeasance of the past.
Now, Sikonati, the reach of the Guptas never ceases to amaze one. We have fatigue around a lot of stuff. Other organizations have been signaled out, but we still feel the destruction of what they were doing in some of these companies. I mean, how does this affect Denel, which is supposed to be the leader of innovation and technology, in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, to have sold, the intellectual property rights off to a company?
The story, Karima, does not even say it was sold. It was given away to VR Laser. Now let's remind the viewers who VR Laser is. It's a company that was bought by Salim Essa of the Gupta fame in 2014, and this is the company that Denel wanted to partner in Asia, particularly in India, to open up that lucrative market, arms market, to South Africa. And we wasted about 300 million rands there with Minister Lynn Brown at the time, trying to force Denel into a partnership with the Guptas. But unbeknown to many of us, they had already sold or given away the intellectual property to produce the iconic Casper from a scientific point of view,
yes,
or the notorious Casper from a civil rights point of view, depending where you sit. They gave away these rights to produce this iconic South African military vehicle to VR Laser, which is in business rescue since the Guptas fled from South Africa. Now, how do you on earth, as a South African state-owned company, give away your intellectual property rights to someone that does not have the capacity, that's got absolutely no involvement with manufacturing the vehicle? This has been, since the 1970s, a South African national asset. I'm talking about the Casper and the intellectual property. Now, Chad paid for 40 of these machines.
That were never delivered?
That were never delivered. 100 million rands that was taken by Denel as a deposit on those now has to be paid back. And, of course, with interest and other things, it has jumped to 250 million rands. But the story Sipho Masondo wrote in City Press there also goes into detail about who the agents were and how they were paid. For example, someone, a go-between,
yes,
was paid 10 million rands of the 100 million rand deposit after the contract with Chad had been signed, not before. So they basically had 100 million rands they didn't know what to do with. Said, here's 10 million rands for you. No production whatsoever. because some amongst Denel's management, who were, of course, appointed by the Guptas,
Yes.
insist the VR laser must manufacture the vehicles.
Of
but
course,
there's
and
no
that
VR
includes
laser.
Mr. Denel Mancha, who is part of Mr. Jacob Zuma's legal team.
He was chairman of Denel at the time.
Of the board. So the links are obvious. Hillary, the other story that caught my attention, of course, Sunday World. Supra killed Botswana. Now, this is, of course, not a new story. But what is interesting is that the affidavits that is coming out here is quite shocking. And Mr. Mahumapelo's defense of himself rather weak.
Yeah, it is indeed. But just going back to the state-owned enterprise story, I mean, this Denel story is sort of more of how deep is the rot that has been caused by state capture, and how very hard it is to turn around. And yet I still am, you know, I know we've got to kind of get to the bottom of all of these stories, but it still seems to me that we are making a very, very slow job.
Yeah.
Of the turnaround,
absolutely,
at this point. Mm-hmm. Yes, so sorry to
no, that's fine. Get into the Supra matter.
Even that Botswana story is exactly very slow progress in terms of the justice system. It's more of the same. Mr. Botswana was killed in 2015. In 2019, nobody has been prosecuted. Now, Supra is amongst those that are accused of having ordered his murder. Of course, Supra denies that. But the weakness of his defense, he says, I know who killed him.
Yes. So if he knows who killed him, why hasn't he gone to report it? You know what worries me?
This is a premier of a senior government official and now a member of parliament who has sworn his allegiance to the Constitution and to defend the Republic of South Africa, and he admits in a newspaper that he is aware of who committed the crimes.
Yes.
He says, I will speak at my own time.
You know, what is incredible for me about this story, Hillary, and it goes back to the institutional rot, is when Shamila Batoy was appointed, Moiponi Noko contested for that position as well. Now, we know Moiponi Noko was the head of the NPA in KwaZulu-Natal. She's now been moved to the Northwest. I mean, is she the kind of head of the NPA that we need in the Northwest to investigate, you know, who killed this man? And a former premier and a member of parliament who says he actually knows who the killer is.
Yeah, because in a very contested province, as it were, to put in someone who's kind of, And Shamila Batoy has said that if you think that there's a whole bunch of cases just waiting to go, there really aren't. I think that's what she found when she got into the NPA, is that the work had never been done on a lot of these cases. It wasn't that someone had blocked them going forward. Investigators had just never investigated, and there probably isn't much capacity either. But the institution really had rotted. So I think she's got a lot. You know, the NPA's got a lot on its plate.
Now, the other paper that was catching my interest, of course, was the Mail and Guardian. They are the first of the weekend papers. A free ride for Floyd. Again, illicit proceeds from VBS Bank allegedly used to pay for a luxury Range Rover. Now, Sikonati, you guys have been instrumental in linking particularly the leadership figures in the EFF to direct benefits of VBS. But they've just been able to shrug it off and almost like Trump just say it's fake news. And people actually question the veracity of the work that your reporters put hours and hours and hours into. How is it that these allegations simply cannot stick? These are like Teflon guys as far as VBS is concerned.
It's not that they cannot stick. It is just that there's nobody prosecuting them. Hillary has just said now we are not doing any work in terms of prosecuting criminals.
We are starting to, but only recently. Really.
Exactly, but so if there is so much evidence available to the media that they can boldly print in the front page of the Mail and Guardian, allegations and indeed link it to evidence. We have done the same at Daily Maverick. The same evidence was available to the law enforcement agencies. So the work of journalists will continue to be disputed publicly because the people that should be doing the job are not doing it, and these are the prosecutors and the police. Someone should have been arrested at not only at EFF, but a whole bank was stolen, and the Terry Muta, who said gratuitous payments to about 53 individuals. Not a single one has been arrested. Now, the issue here is the liquidators of that bank have recovered some of the money from the same thieves. Where are the police? Where are the prosecuting agencies? So we will write and write and write tons and tons, wasting tons of ink on this information. The only time that there will be a definite outcome is when someone has been arrested and been dragged to court. So Floyd Shibambu and all the EFF people and all the mayors and ANC people that were implicated in this will be walking around and saying those journalists are talking nonsense because there's nobody to arrest them.
Now, it segues very nicely into the headline in the Sunday Independent, which of course deals with the slush fund of crime intelligence under Richard Mdluli, who is now facing criminal prosecution himself. And we see there huge abuses that are going on. I mean, the story details...
He's been found guilty.
He's been found guilty
in the High Court,
in the
and
High
he's
Court.
now awaiting sentencing.
Well, there we go. Found guilty, awaiting. We've had a prosecution,
right.
But the monies that have been used and the people implicated still kind of running around, and it goes to the heart of the point of the fact that these institutions were actually hollowed out for other purposes. They weren't actually meant to do their work. So crime intelligence wasn't doing work, it was actually acting politically. Hillary?
Correct, yes. I think so. You've got two kinds of problems. The first is that a lot of the good people were either driven out or left because they couldn't stand it. So you've got just at a capacity level, these institutions have been hollowed out. And the second is that they were deliberately damaged. And you can cite the South African Revenue Service, you had the Commissioner on earlier, you can cite the prosecuting authorities and the law, the state-owned enterprises, which deliberately were sort of repurposed, if you like, for entirely other aims. So you've got to do both things. You've got to, first of all, find out what happened, stop the rot, turn them around, undo that side of the damage, but you've also got to, you've got no people there, or not enough people there to even help with the rebuild. So it's a very long, hard road. And my concern, I suppose, is that one does feel that the decisions to appoint people, to put permanent appointments in, I wrote in my column this week, I mean, there's hardly a state-owned enterprise, with the possible exception of Denel, that has a permanent CEO.
Yes.
In some state-owned enterprises, the entire top layer of leadership is acting. Now, acting executives can't make the kind of strategic long-term decisions and hires that you need to turn institutions
and
around.
Speed is actually what we require, and it's against us. Something's caught your eye in the Sunday Times there in front of you. If you can hold it up for my camera, Sikunati. It talks about ComAir. What is so significant about that story?
So ComAir has been one of the largest clients of South African Airways Technical, the maintenance of aeroplanes, servicing the machines and things. It has now taken its business away and went to buy to Lufthansa. It's not the first. All the major airlines operating on the African continent were for a very long time serviced reliably so by South African Airways Technical, which now cannot do the job because the parent company, South African Airways, has been damaged totally, which affected the technical division. SAA Technical is the largest aircraft maintenance company on the African continent. When other countries still had airlines, they would fly to South Africa for service. Now it's not happening. Lufthansa has taken away business from South African Airways. It's taken away its own business first. It's building a maintenance business here directly to compete with South African Airways Technical. ComAir is not only taking away current business, but it's also building its own maintenance company, meaning South African Airways Technical is forever going down. It had at some point about 3,000 engineers servicing aeroplanes.
Okay, we've got a minute left. Hillary, 30 seconds. Looking at the headlines in the papers, the state of South Africa, what are the stories that are going to dominate headlines going forward this week?
It's going to be a bit of a slow week, as it always is with public holidays in the middle and Parliament sort of standing down for a couple of weeks. So, but I think the kind of, we are certainly waiting, speaking of SAA, for movement on some of the state-owned enterprises, for appointments of new people. That's one of the stories that's going to play out in the next couple of weeks. And we're in the run-up to the budget next month, to the Moody's rating. From my side, in economics, it's going to be quite a key time the next few weeks.
Sekonati?
We can always expect and trust the EFF leadership to dominate the news for all the alleged corruption against them. VBS is not going away anytime soon.
All right, that's where we leave it. Thank you so very much, Hilary Sekonati. You have had, of course, your fix for the week. We will see you next week, and thanks for watching.